The armor was clean, every morning, without exception, without explanation. Nothing remained, not even the smallest trace of what had happened before. It did not decay over time. It decayed only when night arrived. There was no damage visible until the world became still enough to notice. The metal held its shape, but something beneath it had already begun to change. At first, it feels like a small gap between two breaths. Something that should appear simply does not. You look directly, but the moment passes too quickly. You tell yourself it was there, just not long enough to see. Because accepting it too early would mean something is wrong. You hold your gaze longer, waiting for it to appear. You watch the others first, to make sure you remember correctly. Every breath rises, fades, and disappears exactly as expected. But one place in the line never leaves anything behind. And even then, you hesitate to call it real. You decide it must be your eyes, not the air. It is easier to doubt yourself than to doubt the pattern. You tell yourself the cold shifts, that the air is uneven, that somewhere in the wind, the breath is simply lost. And if that is true, then nothing here have to change. You begin to look past it, instead of directly at it. Your eyes move before they can settle in one place. And in that silence, the absence is left untouched. Later, you try to remember exactly where you were looking. But the position shifts every time you think about it. You cannot fix the space to one place in the line. And the face you thought you saw begins to change. So you stop trying to remember it clearly at all. At some point, you stop expecting it to be there. The absence becomes part of what feels correct. You no longer compare it to the others around it. It holds its place, and nothing seems to disturb it. And in time, you accept it, without needing an answer. Even after it settles, something does not feel complete. You cannot name it, but your body still responds. You keep a distance without deciding to do so.
You move around it, as if something occupies that space. And yet, nothing visible ever confirms that it is there.
Later, what remains is not what you saw, but what was missing. You cannot recall the face, only the space it occupied.
The person fades, but the absence does not.
It stays with you, without form, without explanation.
And you learn to carry it, without trying to understand.
When you think back, the moment refuses to stay in place.
It shifts in time, as if it never belonged to a single moment.
You try to rebuild it, but the details refuse to connect.
The sequence breaks, and nothing aligns the way it should.
And you begin to question if it ever happened at all.
You decide it was nothing, something your mind created.
That the cold, the silence, and the waiting distorted your perception. You let the feeling fade, without trying to hold on to it.
And for a moment, everything feels complete again.
But something unseen remains unsettled beneath it all.
Then, without warning, the feeling returns exactly as before.
No sound, no sight. Yet something feels out of place again. You sense the same space, even when nothing stands there.
Your mind rejects it, but your body still reacts.
And you realize it never truly left you at all.
It does not return as a memory, but as something that remains.
It settles somewhere deeper, beyond what you can recall. You no longer question it, because it feels like it belongs. And what once felt wrong, now holds its place without resistance.
It becomes part of your world, without ever being explained.
It does not disappear, because it was never something you could remove.
It remains in the way you see, not in what is there.
A space that once felt empty will never feel the same again. Because once you notice it, you cannot return to before. And even in silence, it continues without being seen.
You forget the details, but not the disturbance it left behind.
You no longer search for it, because you already know it is there.
And in accepting it, you lose the need to question anything.
Because what never left a trace was never meant to be found.